This is Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast is going to join us here in just a second. Hard to say goodbye, as we heard from Jason Kelce. We played the retirement speech in its entirety in the 3 o'clock hour. If you did not hear it or have not seen it yet, you can go to our website at 973ESPN.com. Kelce, a very emotional goodbye today, and Mosher will tell us a little bit more about what he meant to the organization, why he was such a special player and person, and why he had such a connection. The 36-year-old said goodbye after 13 seasons. You remember he was a 6th-round pick back in 2011 out of Cincinnati. In fact, I saw the tweet that the Eagles put out back in 2011, and they actually spelled his name wrong when they drafted him. So he has come a long, long way from them spelling his name wrong to becoming potentially landing in Canton, and I would imagine that will happen. I'm imagining the Eagles will have a lot of days and nights for him. I'm assuming that he'll have a number 62 retired and all sorts of stuff. Let's bring in Geoff Mosher, who has covered Jason Kelce's career, and, of course, he is the host of the Inside the Birds podcast, and he's right here on Football at 4 on 97.3 ESPN. Mosher, I guess what we all thought was going to happen finally happened, and, man, it was an emotional goodbye for Jason Kelce. He could not even get the words out. And I'll tell you, I don't know that he ever really gathered himself throughout the 40-minute speech.
No, Mike, he certainly didn't. I was listening to the speech with my daughter, and we were saying, you know, it's not surprising to hear a guy fight back a few emotions and tears at the beginning and then sort of gather themselves, and he eventually did, but not for quite a while. And it almost sounded to me, I said to my daughter, and she said the same thing, like, it almost sounded like someone who didn't want to retire, you know? I don't think that's the case. I just think it's more the realization of how much he loved playing football and that he has played his final snap of his NFL career and what's been a great career, as he said, filled with ups and downs, but mostly ups, winning a Super Bowl, connecting with the city. And, you know, we tend to look at football players, Mike, oh, you're 34 years old, you're past your prime, you're done, you're retired. It's like, for most human beings, 34 years old, you're just like starting your life and your career and really getting an understanding of what you might be doing professionally. So he knows that his football life is now behind him, and that's why I suspect it's all just so hard to articulate.
Yeah, and I mean, he went through a list of things, thanking people. He remembered some things. He remembered some key moments. He went through all the coaches. But let's start with the relationship that he had starting in 2016 with Jeff Stoutland, because he mentioned, 2016 was the year where a lot of people, he said it, wanted me gone. They wanted me traded, and I would have traded me too. But that relationship with Stoutland, how it kind of saved Jason Kelce's career.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about it because I remember very, very clearly when 2016 came and Doug Peterson took over and Howard Mudd was no longer the offensive line coach. Chip Kelce was no longer there, different kind of offense. I do remember a lot of people, I think maybe out of the Combine, of Senior Bowl, saying, hey, Doug's coming in and this guy's from the Andy Reid tree. Obviously, right? And Doug is kind of like, I want my linemen to be big road grader types. Andy liked those guys, like the John Runyons, the Trey Thomas, the Sean Andrews. Like, the bigger the better. He did like athleticism, and Jason Kelce had it. But at the time, there was a real question about Jason Kelce's fit in Doug Peterson's offense. Now, they didn't do anything at the position, at least not starting. But then you wondered how the first year was going to go if they would move on after a year if Jason Kelce didn't perform well. And as Jason Kelce admitted, he didn't perform all that great early on. But eventually, Jeff Stoutland banged the table for him. They got to work, and he became a better player later in his career than earlier in his career, which you don't often see, Mike. So I think that's a testament to how hard he worked, but he did no lies told there. I mean, he was a guy who, even before he didn't have a great year. There were questions about his longevity with the Eagles.
Moshe, you take a look at some of the things that he did throughout his career, but what, the speech, this speech is obviously 2017 Super Bowl. Is it those speeches, or is it a combination of things for you that puts him maybe at the top of most connectable, identifiable, popular Philadelphia Eagles of all time? Not too many organizations is the center, the most popular guy in franchise history. What makes Kelce stand out in that role?
Well, that just speaks also to the uniqueness of the organization and what this fan base really celebrates within a player, because you can argue that the two most popular players of the last 50 years are not guys who play preeminent positions, center and safety, right? Brian Dawkins, Jason Kelce. I didn't think there would be ever someone who connected with the fan base in a way that Brian Dawkins ever could or ever did. And I think Jason Kelce has. In fact, and I think maybe if you're a fan who's 40 and over, you'll still say, no, it's Dawkins. That's fine. We're talking about two legends here. But I do think for this generation of Eagle fan who maybe is a little bit younger than us, right? I can't imagine any other player than Jason Kelce being the player that they respect the most, they connect with the most, they idolize the most. And so, it sounds like a good poll to put out there on social media. Is it Dawkins? Is it Kelce? Or is it equal? They're just the idol of a different generation of Eagles fans. But the bottom line is it's 1A, whatever, but there's whoever's 2 or 3, it's not even close.
Yeah, and right before you came on, we were talking about how to separate between Kelce and Dawkins, and how Kelce almost surpassed Dawkins is that Dawkins went somewhere else and connected with another town, maybe not more, because he won a Super Bowl there. Kelce stayed and won a Super Bowl here, and that probably elevated him over Dawkins because he was able to do something that Dawkins sadly wasn't able to get done here.
Yeah, certainly winning the chip is a big part of that. I don't think it's held against Brian Dawkins that he went somewhere else and won somewhere else, because I think the city still views that as more the organizational fault than Brian, almost like Brian had no choice but to go to Denver because the organization made him such a low offer or a non-competitive offer. So I think they hold it against him. But certainly Jason winning the Super Bowl and then delivering the speech of all speeches in the Mummers outfit just speaks to the connection right there. This is a guy, and I'll say this, I think he also stands up for the Philadelphia fan at a time where it's never been really great nationally to stand up for Philadelphia fans. But he says what the Philadelphia fan has always said about playing in Philly and how to survive. And he's walked that walk, and he's a guy who struggled, so it's not like he speaks from a place of entitlement. And I think the Philadelphia fans really appreciate that about him, that he's not afraid to say, hey, look, if you just do this, you can appeal to this fan. It's not the fans' fault. They are the most passionate fan base in the country. Yeah, of course, they may do this, they may do that, but it's our job to look beyond that, because it seems like these days, Mike, and listen, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I know what Darius Slay and Steven Nelson have said have come under some scrutiny. They're allowed to be honest, but Jason Kelce speaks for the fan and says, no, it's our jobs to make sure we're making them happy.
We're talking with Geoff Mosher, and of course, you can listen to the Inside the Birds podcast and get more perspective, I'm sure, on Jason Kelce's career. Hard to say goodbye. Story up now over at InsideTheBirds.com. Very emotional, very tough for him to get through this, and obviously the Eagles have to move on without him. I would imagine they knew this was coming and are somewhat prepared for it, Geoff. Let's talk about the impact on the field, because Jason Kelce was a part of selecting the next player. He kind of handpicked Cam Jurgens for that role. So we would imagine that Jurgens will now slide over and play center after Kelce did it. The last time they played a game without Jason Kelce was 2014 is the last time he has missed a game. So this will really be, I think in the COVID year he might have played a series just to keep the streak going and then left the game. But really, since 2014, no one else has even snapped the football in a meaningful game for this team. And that role now will go to Cam Jurgens, we imagine, or did they like him enough at right guard that they will do what they did with Landon Dickerson and just leave him? How do you see that center right guard spot kind of shaping up?
Yeah, no pressure, Cam Jurgens, right? I mean, God, I'm old enough to remember. What's the name of the guy who had to fill in for Cal Ripken, though, after here? I think his name was Ryan Miner, right, for the Orioles.
He actually played for the Atlantic City Surf for a little while.
That's right. And so that in itself shows you that it didn't really work out, trying to replace a legend that he was in the independent leagues just a few years later. But it's tough, and Cam Jurgens will slide in there and play center. Now, that story about Jason handpicking him sort of got a little legs, as they say, throughout that process. Jason Kelce did look at him, talk to him, was fond of him, believed he saw similar qualities. But to say Jason handpicked it, even Jason has said that got a little bit out of control there. but the bottom line is the organization did take Cam Jurgens because he profiles athletically with what they had in Jason Kelce and in general where the game is going and what they like to do offensively with Jeff Stelton running the schemes. Now, right guard is a question now because when Cam Jurgens goes to play center, they drafted Tyler Steen last year. He got on the field like one or two times. Still a lot to prove to be able to play right guard. So now you're looking at an offensive line that has had a lot of continuity over the years. Now you got a new center. Now you got a new right guard. From what we understand, we went to the combine, talked a little bit. From what I gathered, they're not going to be looking in free agency for a starting right guard. They're going to continue to draft offensive linemen, so don't be surprised if yet again they go offensive line at some point during the draft. You should never be surprised. But I don't think and I haven't even really looked at who the class of guards that are out there, but I wouldn't expect the Eagles to be competitive with any free agent guards. Now, maybe for depth, Mike, which they've done in the past, like getting Fred Johnson last year, but not a guy who you expect to come in and compete to start.
I mean, I guess so Jurgens will go over to center, it sounds like here, and then the right guard spot kind of becomes, is that a spot? They got Steen, they drafted him. Do they go short-term kind of veteran like they did with Wisniewski a couple of years ago and try to find a bridge guy and then hope that Steen, or do they want Steen to be the guy, or are they already ready to move on and say, Steen projects maybe more as a backup?
Yeah, no, you can see that they're already making moves. They signed that offensive lineman, it was last week, Darian Kennard. He was with the Chiefs, and we reported that even though he was drafted as a tackle in the 5th round, for the Chiefs moved him inside last year in practice. I don't think he played, and felt that he was better suited to play guard than tackle. So you got him, you got Tyler Steen. We'll see what happens with Sua Opeta. I believe he's a free agent, and we'll see what happens with the draft. You would think that in year 2, just like Jurgens this past year, Steen gets a little bit of a leg up, and they'll give him the first look and the crack at it. But hey, there's a lot of good tackles, Mike, in this draft. We're going to go in the 1st and 2nd round, and a lot of them have the ability, and may have even done it in college, to play guard. So you can't dismiss the idea of the Eagles drafting a future replacement for a Lane Johnson, but starting that guy off at guard if they think he's good enough to do that and profiles that way.
Mosher's other stuff that happened over the weekend, there was reports that Fletcher Cox is leaning towards also stepping back. What kind of feel or percentage or thought do you have that Fletcher also will be having? I don't know that he'll have such an emotional press conference. Fletcher doesn't seem like that kind of guy. But do we also feel that is going to be imminent?
Yeah, he's the one guy I wonder about. The word is in since the end of the year that he was going to retire. The one thing I wonder about, because he played at such a high level for his age last year, and still one of the better interior defensive tackles in the league, is does he say he's retired, not really sign the papers, kind of hold out there, and then sort of like a Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph situation where you get to November or the end of October and there's a team, could be the Eagles, could be another team, right? That needs a little bit of depth on the interior and places a phone call and says, hey, why don't you, come and try to win a ring with us? You wonder if he would do that. And I only ask that because of him playing at the level that he played at last 2 years. Everybody's been waiting for Fletcher Cox to really sort of hit the downside of his career and show it, but he was probably their best lineman last year, most consistent lineman from interior lineman from front to start. Obviously, Jalen Carter had the bigger splash plays, but no question Fletcher was more consistent from season opener to the end of the year.
Another thing, I don't know that anybody really caught this because, it was a national radio interview, but did you hear Kevin Byard at all on the radio this weekend? We had it on 97.3. It was a national show, but he did not close the door on returning to Philadelphia. Maybe surprisingly, he said, yes, this was a money thing. He acknowledged that he was aware that it was coming. No surprise here. But would you be surprised if Byard returns? He said, quote, I still have a relationship with all the guys up there, Howie as well. So who knows? You have the draft coming around, free agency, things like that. I wish all those guys the best, but I'm not going to close the door on coming back to Philadelphia.
I didn't hear it, but it's not at all surprising. It's something we talked about on Inside the Birds. We knew that the Eagles were not going to have him back under the same contract. And then once you release a player from that contract, yeah, they had the ability to right then and there say, hey, let's release you and then work on a 1-year deal or short-term deal for this coming year. But there's going to be a decent number of safeties in that Kevin Byard realm, if you will, on the free agent market. It probably behooves Kevin himself to see what's out there, see what he can still get. It behooves the Eagles to look at how they're going to rebuild the safety spot, which they have to do in free agency. And they need more than one, Mike. And with Kevin being released now, the only safeties they have under contract are Reed Blankenship, Sidney Brown, who's coming back from ACL, and Tristan McCullum. Unless I've missed somebody in there. I think those are the only guys. So
no, you're right.
What we've talked about a lot. Yeah, what we've talked about is not only do the Eagles probably need to get themselves a young second contract safety like they did with either Malcolm Jenkins or Rodney McLeod, someone who's going to be here for a couple of years and give them good production. But then they probably also need to sign a veteran safety, a 1 or a 2 year deal to be a starter next to the other guy that they're going to sign, because what they have right now, I mean, Reed Blankenship is at best should be a third safety, and you just don't know when Sidney Brown's going to be healthy and ready to play a decent amount of snaps. So, yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me at all that they're in the market for a veteran safety along with a young building block safety.
Do you think he got here in middle of the season and then the coordinator, would it be worth if he was willing to come back on a cheaper deal? Would Byard be the best option maybe to bring back in, or is it that turn the page and maybe find somebody else?
I think so. I think someone like Byard, Mike, is important, someone who's smart, someone who's experienced to be able to run Vic Fangio's defense. It's important to have that, but at the same time, I think, and by the way, I think he can play better. As Kaplan likes to say, he played in 3 different defenses last year, which is not fair. He played in the Titans defense, and then Eagles Decide defense, then Eagles Patricia defense. So that's a lot to ask of anybody to play that position. But I do also think the Eagles have to see what they're going to do at the other spot, because one of their issues was just a lack of overall dynamic play out of their secondary, a lack of quickness, a lack of athleticism. So I'd like to see who the Eagles also bring in to play the other safety spot before I say, yeah, go ahead and bring in Kevin Byard as well. Because if they wind up signing like a 28, 29-year-old safety, I don't know, maybe is good but not quick and fits the defense but maybe lacks athleticism, then you might want to look at a 1-year guy who just runs a little better or has a little bit more youth to him. It all, to me, it matters. I don't think you just take 2 random safeties and sign them. It's got to work right.
There has been some reporting on Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and I think Jeffrey Simmons out in Denver, but more Chauncey Gardner. His name has come up from multiple spots there. I mean, does that kind of send some things to you that, no, they want to get a younger and more, playmaking type of safety in here?
Well, he is a playmaking safety. He's just not younger, and he's been hurt a lot. I mean, it's mildly surprising because of how things ended there. but we have seen players come back, even if they had sort of a terse or tense exit before. So we'll see on that. I mean, I think that it makes sense because you would like to have a playmaker back there, someone who can. I mean, let's not get it twisted. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was the reason, one of the biggest reasons that the Eagles got off to that great start 2 years ago, because he was single-handedly creating turnovers and flipping the field. Now, didn't he have like 6 interceptions in a 5-game span or 5 in a 4-game span? That was so big for their turnover ratio, and they really had nothing like that last year. So it's certainly an area they need to upgrade. And it's not like if you look at the landscape of safeties, there's some good ones, but they're not necessarily known for being turnover makers. And the ones that are, like maybe a Xavier McKinney, he's going to be a lot of money.
All right, Moshe. Well, a interesting day today. Jason Kelce got the text around 8:55 this morning that he was going to be speaking. We kind of figured what this was going to be, and it took him about 40 minutes to get to the end. And he finally said, "This is it." After the entire speech, he said, "That's all I got," and got up and walked out. And Jason Kelce, one of a kind. And, of course, you can hear more about it. Inside the Birds has more. Inside the Birds podcast. And, of course, right here on Football at 4. All right, Moshe. Thanks, buddy.
I have a great Jason Kelce memory if you have a second for me to share.
Oh, sure. Yeah, let's hear it.
So 2011, they draft him, 6th-round pick. You know, he comes in. He's not looking like the most, yoked up center you've ever seen in your life, as he admitted, right? And Howard Mudd's the offensive line coach. And first day at training camp, first real day when everybody reports, he's running with the first team at center. This is a 6th-round pick. And I noticed Jamal Jackson, who was the incumbent, was not practicing that day. So I tweet something. This is like the early days of Twitter. And I had a very good relationship with Jamal Jackson because I was at Wilmington and he's a Delaware State guy. And I tweeted something that, it must be a maintenance day for the older guys because Jason Kelce's playing center, somebody else is playing here. And within like 5 minutes, Jamal reaches out to me and goes, "No, this isn't a maintenance day. That's your starting center." I said, "What?"
Wow.
He said, "Trust me, that is your starting center this year."
He knew.
And lo and behold, Jamal Jackson knew. And part of that was not because Jason Kelce was so great yet, but because he fit that Jeff Saturday mold Howard Mudd was looking for. But I tell you, I've never doubted the most concrete information in my life until that day. I'm like, Jamal, you're crazy. You're just upset. You're just there like, no, he says, "No, Jeff, this guy's the starting center." And lo and behold, Jamal was right.
Unbelievable. Good story. And I like some of the stuff that he mentioned today as well, which was, hey, I saw Jason Peters, and I was like, I don't know that I can do this. And then I saw some other guys and said, all right, maybe I can do this. But that's one of the things that made him just a connectable guy with the fan base. Jason Kelce retires after 13 seasons with the Philadelphia Eagles. Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. Thanks, buddy.
Take care, bro.
All right, there's Geoff Mosher here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN.